Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome here if you're new. I wanted to film this reaction video today because I've seen in the news recently in the UK, there's been kind of like, I think, a court proceeding about a man who basically burned the Quran in public. I mean, I think that's what happened. I'm not too sure. There's been a lot of talk about like, is it okay to desecrate religious symbols or basically anything that people revere, anything that people find to be kind of sacred? Yeah, so from this one subject, obviously, anyone who wants to stop destroying religious symbols or kind of doesn't want anything like that in public, obviously, this is what leads to further blasphemy laws, basically. And especially for people who have left religion, all of this is interconnected because at the end of the day, like, leaving religion is also technically a form of blasphemy because you're saying you disagree now with the religion or you no longer believe in it. So naturally, this topic is of interest to anyone who's, like, in our case, have become Muslim or left or any other religion, or people who just generally want to criticize religions like Islam. And I guess this case might set some precedents, especially in the UK. So it's something, it's really interesting to follow this, and it's actually really important to see what's happening here. Yeah, so I found a really interesting video on Good Morning Britain, which is like a very mainstream news channel where a lot of people tuning in the morning to like watch the news. Basically, it's like a breakfast news channel, and it's actually two people discussing, is it okay to criticize religion? Because as I said, from this case, you'll see that many other situations can follow. Yeah, and apparently last week or this week in the UK, the Tory party basically signed some kind of, I don't know what it was, but they basically put forward a notion or some sort of document saying that they basically are supporting the right of every British person to criticize religion. And I think it's tied to the kind of events that's happened due to this case. So these people are discussing it, and they brought on two people with, I'm guessing, two opposing beliefs, but let's just watch it and see. I'm going to react to it. I'm going to share my thoughts. You guys can join in too and share your comments below and tell me what you guys think as well.
A dozen Tory MPs have signed a new bill that they say would protect people's right to criticise religion in law. Comes just days after a man was found guilty of a religiously aggravated public order offence for burning a copy of the Quran.
So, is it okay to criticise religion with such actions? Media commentator and British Muslim writer Dr. Rakib Hassan say, yes, it is. It's part of our freedom of speech.
The former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire says open debate can go too far. And I guess, Scarlett, what does too far mean? I mean, it's a free society. If I want to say, I think the Catholic religion is ridiculous, or that I think Mormonism is wrong, that's my right.
No, I think we have to respect religions, right? I mean, I'm an atheist and I respect other people's religions, but I think we can absolutely criticize. What I worry about is denigrating religion and doing things that actually provoke people of that religion. Something like, if you were going to burn a Bible outside a church when people were coming out, that's a deliberately provocative act. I think that's wrong.
In my back garden, though, it's fine.
Yeah.
See, this is where I kind of agree, because I'm not saying like people should not do what they want with their own property. And I think that's where it gets tricky. But like, obviously, I don't think it's a good idea to go outside someone's holy religious place and deliberately provoke people, because like with anything, you don't want to provoke people. You don't want to cause people to feel uncomfortable. And I think that's just a general principle. I just feel like most people, most normal, sane-minded people don't really want to go around provoking people, especially in places which are considered holy, because it's just respect. It's like, there's so many situations which apply like that, where you just wouldn't deliberately want to annoy people.
Do what you want in your back garden. What I'm talking about is the law at the moment is absolutely fine. The law at the moment says, of course you can do it in your back garden, but the law at the moment would say, possibly, probably, that actually if you burnt a Bible outside a church, as people were coming out, it's a deliberately provocative act and it's a public order offence. And I think we should just leave it there and not go any further.
Dr. Rakib, what's your concern about this? Because I'm sure you don't want people to be provocative. So why would you say people should be allowed to burn a Bible outside a church or a Quran outside in a demonstration? Because those are quite visceral things, aren't they? We all have memories of, I don't know whether it be Nazi Germany or anything, but the burning of a religious text, I think it's quite an emotive thing.
No, absolutely. And I find the desecration of holy texts grotesque, in my view. And I also find, for example, the promotion of derogatory cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, I find that grotesque as well. But what I'm concerned about is, ultimately, are we undermining a social contract where religious freedom also comes the responsibility of accepting that people may behave towards your religion that you may not like? And I think the problem is here is that if there was a revival of blasphemy laws, I actually think that would do more harm than good for religious social conservatives. Now, for example, British Muslims, they have the freedom to work towards spreading their faith. Now, that might involve criticising other religions. That includes challenging the doctrines of the Trinity and incarnation in Christianity, or scrutinising and criticising idol worship in polytheistic religions such as Hinduism. Now, some people, more devout members of the Christian and Hindu communities, they might consider that to be blasphemous.
So in this case, it's actually the Muslim guy who's actually defending people's freedom to criticize religion. And he's right. Everything he's saying is actually right here, that, you know, disagreeing with religions or not being of a certain religion or choosing your faith by extension means that you have to disagree with other elements of people's faith. You just have to. So he's actually right. But one thing he did say about, you know, drawing pictures of Muhammad, to me, that's not offensive at all.
If we change the law, it's introducing blasphemy laws by the back door.
No,
that's the concern.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we'd make the point that the medieval common law offences of blasphemy and blasphemous libel, they were formally abolished back in 2008. And if there's a perception that blasphemy laws are being revived with the courts, then there is the possibility that people would perceive that to be a very undemocratic development.
But these Tory MPs are wanting to change the law to stop blasphemy laws being reintroduced, because they've gone. Just to understand, though, if outside a synagogue and people are making anti-Semitic chants wearing Nazi uniforms, or if outside a mosque people are standing, not only burning a Quran, but also, I don't know, if they are
chanting anti-Muslim slogans.
Are you saying that's okay?
No, that's absolutely not okay. I think that that's disrupting public order offence.
And you would want the public order law to be used to stop that happening?
No, absolutely. But I think
which is what happened in this case.
Yeah, and ultimately what I support is law enforcement intervening in cases where there are clearly public order offences. But I think that even from a socially conservative standpoint, I think that a cornerstone of liberal democracy is being free to criticise religions and orthodox religious doctrines and the impacts it may have on wider society.
What's the difference between criticising religion and anti-Semitic chanting outside of synagogue?
No, because I think anti-Semitic chanting, you're targeting a specific religious group, a religious people.
Causing them harm.
Exactly. While religious, there's a difference between...
No, but something here which I think some people, like anti-Semitism, the reason that is different, because you can be Jewish but not religious. Jewish is also an ethnicity, and it's, you know, that's been that way for thousands of years. That's been an established fact, that being Jewish is an ethnicity. Being religious is not an ethnicity. Like Islam is a set of beliefs that you choose to believe in, which you can change if you want to, or you can join if you want to. But being Jewish or any other race is not a choice. You're born into that. You can't change that. So I think, you know, in that case, you know, I think there always needs to be a clear distinction here, because once again, I've seen this before. I've seen certain people, you know, who are maybe Islamists, and they try to jump on the race bandwagon. They jump on the, you know, they equate their struggle to the struggle of women's rights of LGBTQ rights, of, again, you know, rights of certain ethnicities, and it's not the same at all.
I mean, that was the reason why this debate has begun about changing the laws in some ways, isn't it? Because in the situation of the case that's brought a lot of this to light, they had to go to other areas of the law in order to prevent this provocative action of burning the Quran.
But it was a public order offence.
Yeah.
And I think the law is fine, and I don't think that I don't think it's about blasphemy, right?
Because the individual was not convicted of burning the Quran, was
No, he was. It was absolutely about a public order offence, and I just think if you're provoking disorder, I mean, remember, you know, we had riots last year, right, that were really, really scary for many people. And I just think that what we want is we want to put it down. We want to have no public order offence, and actually, instead of having arguments about whether we're going to bring back blasphemy, which clearly this has nothing to do with it, is that actually we can have more debate about religion. But I mean, we live in a tolerant society. It's really, really important that actually the effort goes into making us more tolerant rather than more divisive.
But what does she mean, more tolerant? Like, more tolerant of what? Like, okay, I agree, public disorder is not a good thing, but this is the thing. It's always liberal people like this who promote so much tolerance. They promote so much inclusivity. And you're just like, are you unaware that there are people who will use this situation to sneak in other laws through the back door? Yes, everybody wants to be tolerant. Everybody wants to respect people's right to believe what they want. But instead of saying, you know, we need to be more tolerant, maybe you should say we should be more tolerant of all different beliefs, whether that's people who are apostates. I think British people are pretty tolerant. I think a lot of the intolerance is coming from certain extremists who actually aren't tolerant at all. They are the ones who would happily see a lot of our rights, especially like me as a woman, a lot of our rights revoked.
You're saying we don't need to change the law?
We do not need to change the law.
Do we need to change the law if the public order laws at the moment allow us to stop the anti-Semitic demonstration outside a synagogue while allowing people to express views on religion?
I think what I support carefully crafted and well-considered laws. And I think that, for example, people say that, oh, there's some people who argue that the desecration of holy texts, that should be banned. But I actually think that that could actually inflame anti-religion rebelliousness. And if you were to introduce legislation like that, you might actually see more burning of desecration.
Do we need new legislation or not?
I think, in my view, if we have new legislation, it needs to be very carefully crafted. But I think the current arrangements in place allow for people to address public order offences in terms of from a law enforcement perspective.
So the 12 Conservative MPs who are saying we need a new law to say we're not reintroducing blasphemy, both of you are saying actually we don't need that. What we just need to do is make sure that we make the current system work well.
Yeah. And also you have to think, why are they doing it? Right? Why? Because when we first had the whole thing about hate speech, I think it was back in, it was before 2010 anyway. I mean, there were a lot of evangelical Christians who wanted the right to be very abusive about Islam. And actually, that's what also worries me, is that it's a divisive thing.
Exactly what I was just saying a couple of minutes ago. She's saying that evangelical Christians who want to be abusive towards Islam. Lady, that is not my biggest concern. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's probably some extremist Christians who want to say some horrific things. I don't doubt that. But actually, people's main concern is Islamist extremists who have a huge network behind them, who actually have the ability to go in to our institutions and influence our laws in a way that would put people like me, even her as a woman, you know, there's no limit to what the freedoms that these people would want to reduce for people. You know, it's these kind of people always will hark back to the obvious, you know, oh, it's always like, you know, the Christian extremists, but she's not mentioning at all that there are genuine Islamist extremists who would use this in a very, very bad way. Also, people in this country are not scared to speak out against Christianity. They're not. You know, this country has a tradition now of people openly criticizing Christianity, and they have done for many years now. You know, you can openly say, I'm an ex-Christian, which you don't even need the name for an ex-Christian, because let's face it, there's not really any imminent danger anymore if you leave Christianity. If people want to speak about the horrors found within Islam, are they actually safe to do that? That's the true question. This media outlet, it's very, very mainstream. And, you know, that was a very safe debate, and they didn't really delve into the true issues, I'd say, the actual issues behind this whole blasphemy thing. You know, that they didn't really cover the things people are worried about, I think, because once again, people don't feel like they can talk about these things openly because they're scared of repercussions. They're scared of what they'll be labeled as, and they don't want to cause tensions. But we have to ask ourselves in the UK, like, why are we at that point? I personally think that, you know, Britain has always been a really tolerant society. I stand by this. I think the UK is one of the most tolerant, progressive places in the world for all different types of people. But what people are worried about now is that, you know, people are basically trying to kind of sneak blasphemy laws through the back door, which will shut down a lot of criticism about aspects of Islam that people find disturbing or that they just don't agree with. You know, people who are following Islam in that way are instructed by their religion to implement the Sharia wherever they go. And however they do that, you know, however they start, this could be one area where they start actually trying to implement that. And that's something that people who have a degree of knowledge about this stuff, we know how this begins, we know how this starts. And that's why it is important to actually tackle this subject head on. As I said, I don't agree with going and provoking people. And what that guy did, you know, by burning the Quran, if he did it in front of a mosque, to be honest, I don't really know too much about the case. But if he did do it in front of a mosque, I do think that's provocative. And I think that just because you disagree with people, it doesn't give you the right to go and, you know, disturb people in a place which is a place of peace. But criticizing religion, openly discussing topics like these is important. And once again, from that kind of segment that I just showed you guys, I feel like it always comes back to, you know, oh, the extremist Christians, oh, the bigots, but they always dance around what people are actually worried about, which is Islamic radicalism, extremism, fundamentalism. These are the things we need to start saying. It's interesting to see where this will all go, how this is going to play out. Do I think it will get the conversation going? I think so, but I still think people are really scared to discuss this. I understand why, but at some point we're just going to have to get brave as a society if we don't want things like blasphemy laws to creep in through the back door. And yeah, anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you watched the whole thing or just for watching a little bit of it, thank you for being here, and do leave your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading every comment and it means a lot to me. And I'll see you guys again in the next video, and I wish everyone the best.